Perfect. So we're ready to begin. Welcome everyone to the Mahogany Room. We'll now be starting with our concurrent sessions. And moderating today's first panel on the new era of design is Mr. Bobby Mukherjji, Principal and Chairman at Bobby Mukherjji Architects. And joining him as speakers are Mr. Andy Fisher, Managing Director at AFW, Mr. Gary Greene, Principal at GGD, Mr. Oryza Irawan, Project Director, Swarna, Hutama, Loka, and Mr. Toby, Studio Director, Landscape at WATG. Gentlemen, over to you.
Thanks for calling us, and it's great to be here at HICSA. This is a subject that, you know, in our industry, everyone's been talking about to a great extent. But us being designers, we always face a challenge in how to exactly achieve this. It's easy to talk about it, it's easy to have a design brief, but when it comes to real execution and putting it into reality, it's not that easy. And that's a challenge that I think all of us agree to. What does this mean, you know? Sustainability, smart and stylish are no longer separate. They become an integrated approach. Sustainability is about longevity, responsible use of materials, and smart is about systems that reduce friction and improve operations. And style comes from context and clear differentiation between rather than trends. The challenge is how do we balance all this without forcing them? We all have a clear intent of wanting to do this, but bringing everything into alignment is a challenge. With this in mind, I'm looking forward to hearing our panelists' views where this conversation takes us. So starting with you, Andy. How do you see the balance between sustainable, smart and stylish evolving in luxury hospitality projects over the next 5 to 10 years?
Big question. I think firstly I'd say sustainability. It's not a term I like to use because it actually is an add-on. It becomes a separation, it's a separate subject, separate add-on. And invariably we're giving people choices as to whether we are sustainable in the approach. I think being responsible is, as you mentioned, is a much better term because, and that has to come from an alignment between owners, designers, and the operators as well, in terms of what those goals are at the beginning. As designers, I feel we always try to design responsibly with good sustainable principles in mind. Often we don't actually mention those when we conceptualize and present. It's only afterwards, because I think it is taking too much emphasis and focus and giving clients particularly choices and people choices as to whether they choose to follow that. There's lots of reasons why not: cost, time, whatever, complexity, operational issues. So that's one thing. I think if we are designing responsibly, the other two things, style and luxury and all of these things actually fall into play. Choosing materials that are responsible. Are those luxurious materials? Well, it depends how you define that. If we're being responsible, they can be considered luxury. So I think they really do come together, but I think it's really crafted and shaped really with the goals of what we want to achieve with a project from the beginning.
So are you able to put this into action in your projects?
Yeah, we try. I think there are, many tricks we can play in a way, as I said at the beginning, when you see, we've done it ourselves, you see a lot of presentations where we go through the context, we look at the concept, we look at the ideas and the approach, and then we talk about sustainability, we talk about the style, we talk about these things almost in different headings, instead of a collective response, which work off each other.
And your clients' reactions to these?
Sometimes a bit of surprise, actually. It's great to get them first to say, yes, I like this, and then sort of unravel the issues behind it, or the reasons behind it as well, in terms of those subjects that you mentioned. You know, style as well is a very people today, guests today, come to hotels with far more knowledge than they did 10 years ago. Digital first people, they check it out, they know what they want, they know what they want to be, and they have expectations. And so I think we're starting from a different point when we are looking at what style is. It could be classed as something a little bit, perhaps a little bit more temporary. Trend, style, trend, where do those two fit together? So I think we have to be careful of that. But I think if you're selling a whole narrative together of all those whole things, those three things together, I think you've got a much more solid story to tell.
Right. Toby, where do you see the biggest opportunity today to better align sustainability, technology, and design in your hospitality projects?
That's a great question, and I think just following on a little bit from what Andy was saying there, that you know, it's how we look at sustainability, and if it becomes an add-on, it's always a question. So I tend to look at things through the lens of sustainability actually being completely connected to human well-being. You know, if we look after the planet, we're looking after ourselves. If we look after the sustainable economy, we're looking after our economic well-being. If we're looking after the environment, we're looking after the animals and so forth. So it's all kind of embedded in that connection of human wellness, and that starts to align, I think, some of these topics of sustainability, technology, and so forth. And I think hospitality is well placed because you can connect, you know, people and nature. You can connect, you know, and that has its wellness benefits. And I think the other layer onto that is the economic value as well. That the wellness becomes an experience, it becomes a value add. And there's, you know, there's data to show that properties that have wellness offerings, they have higher stays, higher spending, and so they add economic sustainability, economic value. So I think if we just look at sustainability through the lens of connecting it to human wellness, it starts to open up an experiential component that's more than just efficiency, and it starts to embed itself in how we plan the site, plan the experiences, and it just becomes part of the project.
Gary, in this market, you know, which is so saturated with design references, how can hotels maintain their own distinct brand or its design identity while being, you know, while responding to the global trends?
Yeah, well, there's so many ingredients that go into design of projects, and each project's unique. It's not only the site location and the brand, but it's the owner, and it's their DNA and their company culture and their goals. It's the general context, whether we're building in which part of India or if it's another country. I tend to not dissect it though. There is sustainability, and there's style, there's planning, there's context, and we could take all these factors and all these layers and ingredients, put this recipe together, and it's going to be different. You start changing one, everything's the same, and we have a different owner, and we're interacting, we're reacting, we're brainstorming. It's going to come out differently. And so, in a way, it's a recipe for putting this project together. In another way, there's a certain alchemy to it of sort of baking these ingredients together and brainstorming on it and see where you end up. But there's different layers, and you're going from general to particular. So you're not specifically thinking about sustainability or wellness, but it's all part of the equation as you move forward. And it's a team effort, with not only with the owner, but with the operator and with the other consultants. And it's part of what makes it fun.
We often face this problem with, you know, trends, and there's a present trend that might be going on for the next, say, 5 years or 10 years. But then, you know, I think that also being responsible and sustainable is also creating something that's timeless, where you don't have to, again, you know, renovate things, break down things, again, use resources. And so in this market where there's so many trends that keep coming and going, how do you handle that? And like, as a designer, I feel great when I've made a hotel that does not require renovation for a long time. I think I've done my job right, and I've ticked all these points as well. It takes a lot of effort to do that. How do you do that?
It's a really good point. You want to make an impression. You've got a new project and you want to get noticed and have people appreciate it. But it also needs to stand the test of time. You don't want something that is shouting so loud that it's out of date in a few years. And so the initial impression is important, but then what's it like in 5 or 10 years? And then I think hotels, more than anything else, more than any other building type, beauty is more than skin deep, because we react to what we see and what we touch and feel and what we experience, but then go behind that, and the functionality and the operability and the back of house and all the things that go into making a successful property, the performance of it, and whether we're in the industry or not, guest experience, everybody's familiar with guest experience if you travel, if you stay at hotels, but that's just one part of the equation. It's essential, but then from an owner's standpoint, what goes into making a property profitable and operable?
Continues being profitable.
Exactly.
So many hotels, they start with a big bang, first 5 years into the killing, and then you see the graph going down. As a new hotel opens in the neighborhood, they take away all the business. So it's a big challenge for us to achieve that, and this also varies from location to location as to what's considered to be timeless and smart in that environment. It varies. In India or the US, even within India, different parts of India, there's another aspect to it, what works and what doesn't work.
Just say one thing to add to what Gary said. I think there is a tendency sometimes for hotels to go a little bit too far towards theatre. You think of a heritage hotel, why'd you go there? Do they change? Were they designed with brands? Were they designed with that design ethos in that sense? No, they're beautiful projects, beautiful designs. I think it's a balance between getting something that can have longevity, but rather than just suiting the time of now. And I think those are big decisions on how we balance that design approach.
And strangely, what I have observed with my own projects is that some of our classic-looking projects have outlived all those modern ones, that puts us in a tight spot, because you want to be cool, you want to be, trendy, you want to be modern, you think you're going to, the present audience is going to appreciate that. But then over time, it's the grand dames, the classic hotels that seem to outlive all of this, and all they have to do is just change some fabrics and upholstery or some light fixtures from time to time, and they last 100 years.
But they were modern at their time, as well. So
yes, there's something to be questioned here, which is something that constantly plays on my mind.
I also think there's aspects of design that transcend style. That we're all familiar with, of scale and proportion and a feeling of quality, and maybe you can't put your finger on it, but within minutes, first impressions, you can feel quality. Maybe you don't know why, and that's regardless of style, whether it's classical or modern.
Oryza, question for you. What are the biggest challenges today in aligning design ambition with practical execution on large hospitality projects? You have experience in getting these projects executed, hence it's more specific question for you.
Right. I think we are having those issues as a designer. See, in our experience in our company also, what we are always saying at the first place when when the client approaches us is we are in a one team and collaboration is a must. And how do we align all those client vision, whether it's a single client or groups client or it's a corporate client. So we're always trying to have time to more onto discussion, brainstorming, to make sure all the vision is aligning up to the practicality on site. So even during the time when we are applying the design to the technical, we also always having more onto discussion back into the root of the visioning since the beginning of the client. We always take back all the first vision through the lines of the execution. That is why we always put together the storytelling into our concept, and we always remind those storytelling from time to time, even during the construction phase, because yeah, by experience we having also some client in the middle of the construction, they change his mind because of the other friends or colleagues say something about it, and suddenly all the direction move into the different things. But then as a designer, we always ask to back to the root of the vision was we reconfirm again whether this is the right direction or we're changing things or what's happening. That's always happening in our project, which means it's more effort, I believe, because we're not just where client hire us, okay, you do the designing, you do the works, those kind of things, but we have the responsibility to also directing, okay guys, this is what we discussed before. Are we far away from there or we keep in line to that? That's also becoming our responsibility, just not drawing things, just not providing all the rendering, beautification, all those things, but be part of the thing to make it your vision into the reality. That's the best thing for us.
Well, when it comes to a project delivery standpoint, how do you ensure that the smart systems and the sustainable strategies are executed and implemented on site as intended? That's a big challenge we face in many projects.
Right, yeah.
How do you do that?
Well, we ensure at the first place, again, when we go about sustainability or smart option, whether it's technology, whether it's operation, whether it's material, we know as a designer for sure, there's a related with budget, with investment. So again, the most important thing is for project is how far we want to do the sustainability items and how far the ownerships wants to invest in terms of the smart option that it will relate into investment back of the when it will be back of the investment. We're always asking that option at the first place, because there was an experience that okay, this client wants to fully all the roof covered by the solar panel, for example, right? Then we do the design. all fully solar panel, all the system, sustainability, whatever they ask for, we provide. After 6 months, it's come back to us that it's not feasible, right? So, which is okay and not okay, but it will be good whether those items we spend a lot of time at the first place. We discuss about how far we want to do this kind of thing, you know? Because people say sustainability is costing a lot. Yes, it is, but there's some resort or some hotel back then, because we are from Bali, Indonesia, there was a small resort in small islands. Difficult to get there. Just like Bobby mentioned today, this morning, there was a resort that not fancy, not highest material, not fancy, no marble, those kind of things, but small island, tiny island, maybe about 10 to 15 units. But it has authenticity that creates people go there and spend more because it's different, it's authentic, and when people stay there, they had a feeling of they becoming themselves, they have the memory, and it creates some sense of humanity, you say, or those kind of well-being. So sustainability is, what do you say, it's a jargon right now. People always say about it, and because in our culture, sustainability is already in the root of the daily activities, right? So we try to bring up those connections again on how people feel and be responsible for that reason.
That's great. And it's great that your culture in that location allows it, you know, but if you were to move to Jakarta, you know, then how would you handle that there? You know,
well,
I see a big disconnect, you know, the quality of existence in Bali is a dream. You know, you are able to do all this stuff, you know, it gets, but within the same country, you know, on the other end of the spectrum, in Indonesia, in Jakarta, they're all, it's like Bombay, you know, big monsters coming up, you know, big monster hotels, and I think.
Well, yeah, but
have you worked in any of the big cities there?
Yes.
So how would you translate that there?
It's always back to the client vision, always, because we designer, we have our idealistic, let's say, for example, we want to be more greens, less aircon, natural circulation. We always trying to get into that level, right? So, but back again, it needs to be at the same vision as the client. So we're not saying we denying those client what wants to do. Oh, this is fully aircon, this is not. But again, we have to in collaboration onto that. I know it's difficult in reality, right? So, but it is what it is for that reason in a big city of that.
Toby, from a landscape perspective, how can site planning and outdoor design drive both sustainability and guest experience simultaneously?
I think it comes back to a lot of the principles that's already been discussed, but I think ultimately what we're talking about is trying to bring value to a property, experiential value, which then drives economic value for the property. And I think from a landscape point of view, what we start to look at is sort of biophilic design. And again, just sort of connecting that back to human wellness. You know, time in nature has sort of proven health benefits. So if you're conserving nature, you're adding health benefits, which then leverages value add to a property. And again, if we talk about Jakarta as an example, you know, maybe there is a property where in a very urban context you might not be able to change the whole city, but on a small level, if you're creating an oasis of habitat in the city, you're contributing back to that city. And you know, so then it starts small and it's a microcosm, but then it becomes a destination. It becomes a place that people want to go, so then people replicate it. I'll give you another example. I finished
an example of a live project.
Yeah, so an example of a live project. I finished the Grand Hyatt in Singapore a couple of years ago, opened. And the design intention for that is a renovation project, 1980s building. But we created a landscape that was driven by two factors. One was expanding the spa and the sort of wellness health gym out onto the podium deck. And the other aspect was connecting it to the city in a genuine way. And the way we did that was designing the landscape around biodiversity connectivity. So in that area, there's sort of butterfly trails that move through the city. But the trouble with butterflies is they need to short distance hop between plants. So we created plant material that attracted butterflies. And so they were able to move through the city, which helps pollination, which then helps plant material across the city. Now what we did is we interwove those, so we created pockets of sort of a wellness pool within a sort of lush landscape. We created other facilities in that environment, and the planting was all driven around biodiversity enhancement. So again, you're sort of creating a wellness destination, but creating a sustainable destination through that biodiversity enhancement in the cityscape. So it's giving back to the city, but it's also creating a unique experience. It's a sort of garden oasis right in the center of Singapore.
And you mentioned about the butterflies, and since the project has been completed, you see them actually coming in and...
Absolutely, and dragonflies. Yeah. It's happened. And it started to drive narrative of the project, so the artwork is based around biodiversity, and there's an educational component to it, so it starts to get people thinking.
So these, I presume you mentioned a spa, so there'll be therapy rooms.
Mm-hmm.
So these rooms, are they sort of, these sides are open, or are they closed air-conditioned spaces within the landscape?
So there's a couple of things we did. There's some actually guest rooms, which are family rooms on the ground level. Originally there was no privacy for them, so we created little garden spaces for them to connect, and we created connections for them to get to the pool. Now the pool we created was we actually added a swimming pool, so we created a lap pool out of the old tennis courts, and we created a wellness pool, which was a hydrotherapy pool. So people from those rooms can go directly from their room out into a little private garden and into the wellness pool area, which is a hydrotherapy pool. Once you're in that pool, you're kind of immersed in greenery, and you can't see the city. So it's sort of an oasis. The other thing we did is we leveraged the sort of fire engine access area, which is typically unusable, and created a function lawn so the fire trucks can turn around on it. But that's connected to the gym through a sort of long stretch. That now gets used for high rocks training. So the gym now extends out, you can do your high rocks run, go back into the gym, do your fitness. And so there's a really strong connection between the gym and the outdoor garden space. So it's really creating those connectivities in the sort of biodiverse, rich landscape that's created that sort of oasis.
Fantastic. Looking forward to seeing that in the near future. Do you think sustainability in hospitality is actually getting implemented meaningfully, or is it just still largely a branding exercise that they're talking about?
Well, certainly I think it's being implemented to varying degrees. We're still at a point in time where we're talking about it separately. I think it's getting baked in now just as a matter of the normal process. To what extent is it implemented? To what degree? There's so many other players that go into that decision other than the designers. But are we conscious of it? It's part of, again, it's one of the ingredients in the overall equation.
It's not just about design, I'm talking about your projects in general with all the stakeholders coming in. Do you see them actually achieving this?
It's a good question, and there's consistently you start out with the goal of it. Everyone starts out with that goal, and then you get the reality of first cost versus life cycle costs that play into it, and it becomes a decision by ownership based on money and evaluating. I'm a new firm. I've been in business 5.5 years, so I don't have completed projects to refer to. With my former firm, a couple of the projects were with ITC, and they had a really genuine commitment, as you know, to lead platinum.
That's a unique.
That's the platinum standard there.
One of its kind.
So I can't really speak to implementation yet with my projects. We're still in process. There's a number of things that you two gentlemen mentioned that really resonated with Oryza, the idea of authenticity and also the idea of interaction. That you may start off with you've got a certain bank of experience and reference points and understanding with respect to your discipline for hospitality, but then you're interacting and you're being a good listener, and that process then is if you're being responsive and you're doing your job right, it's not necessarily going to end up where you think you were starting, where you thought you were heading when you started. And the other question was about, I think that was interesting, was about cities versus resorts. And the idea of authenticity, I think you can be authentic to a place in a lot of different ways. And what Toby, what you described about Grand Hyatt, so I know that property from way back, and now I want to see this. I want to see what you did with it. That sounds really cool.
But the one in Orchard Road, the original?
Yeah, it's just around the corner there. And but yeah, can you be authentic and have a true, meaningful sense of place in the middle of Jakarta versus being in Bali? I think you certainly can, or in Mumbai versus being in Alibag or whatever. It's how do you get that sense of place and where somebody is there and they have a feeling of authenticity regardless of the style or the scale.
If I can add to it, well, to be honestly, how much it will be implemented in terms of the sustainability in the project, right, by experience. For us, 30% implemented is already happy for us, because that's one step ahead, right? Even we just doing the natural drainage like a Subak in Bali or whatever Miyawaki forest right now, it's happening, adding more diversity of the landscape. When it's becoming implemented, we are so happy for that. Not reach 50% or 75%. I know it's difficult for us, even on the ownership also, but 25 to 30%, I'm happy.
I completely agree with that. I think we have to remember really with the design process. The start's important, the finish is important. What happens in the middle is a process. You know, we produce drawings for somebody to take on site and build from. That's basically the process. But that process in the middle, we have to be aware that it has to be one of positive compromise. We're always trading when it comes to decisions. And we're always fighting for things that we know, even if our clients or the stakeholders don't quite see it the way we do, we have to fight and hold on to certain things because that's going to make a difference. And that's part of the sustainability approach as well. We have to trade a little. We have to help. We have to manage budgets. We have to manage times and complexities on site. We have to work with that entire team. And it is a process of trading. But we are the ones, we're the sort of the governors of managing what we can really let go of and what we can really retain and fight hard to retain. But that's the nature of what we do. And I think the sustainability side of it is fundamental to that part of the fight in the end.
The same conversation, this is often seen as being expensive, being sustainable, right? So in your experience, how do you balance this sustainable design with financial viability? It's a challenge that I often face, and how do you do that?
The most sustainable thing we can do is not build. And it's cheap. But obviously we're not in that game. I think balancing that cost, because we have to look at it different ways. It's easy to, particularly with hotels, to forget that we are designing an asset for the next 100 years, hopefully longer. The fundamentals has to be there. We're working for our owners, who at the time have a brand, who are directing what that experience is going to be to some degree. But the asset has to be important. Now, the good thing with hotels, if you look at embedded carbon, for instance, and India is great at not changing buildings as well over a period of time. They tend to get kept and retained.
We use it to the last.
Yeah, so it's actually a very good base when you look at retained carbon in the build, where we're not demolishing and we're not doing these sorts of things. So, but the important thing is the asset and how we approach that from the beginning. Then we have to have the buy-in with the owners, as we all said as well. And part of our job is really demonstrating to owners who perhaps aren't familiar with the value of some sustainable principles, how much money they'll save, not how much it's going to cost. Those things that we designed, why are we doing it? It's good for the asset long term, not just for the short term of that particular moment, that particular stay. So I think it's, I think it has to be holistic.
Yeah, sorry, I just refer back to the Grand Hyatt again, talking about economics. What was really interesting about that project is that we applied for a national grant for green buildings. And actually what ended up happening is we got a grant for the client, and it paid for the entire softscape of the project.
Oh, wow.
Which was fantastic for the client. Didn't really help our fees. But it was great for the economics of the project. So there are ways of helping owners to kind of seek grants, particularly climate change and sustainability grants. In Singapore we're very lucky because the government's very supportive of such things. So it's not everywhere, but there are global organisations that will help with funding.
This is a little bit off the topic from, but after pandemic, has the guest expectations have evolved when it comes to design, so what are these expectations that you see happening now compared to pre-pandemic?
Massive difference. Yeah. As I mentioned, digital first. People have more knowledge, they have more understanding. People want experience. They want, a lot of the time, as business travelers, as many of us are, we spend far too much time in hotels, but the bits we remember are actually often outside of the hotel. Because especially in new places, we want to connect and we want to feel like we've learnt and understood something. But people can't. They want to do things. They want to know that their gym is available. Where they want to do high rocks or not just a regular gym, they'll go online. They'll check where's the nearest gym I can leave for 3 days. I'll go find something outside because the gym in the hotel doesn't offer what I need. So the expectations are huge. And I think we really have to look at the fundamentals of what the hotels are and how we adapt to those expectations in how we design. Because there's a lot of knowledge that people have when they come to the place. And therefore their expectations are massively higher than perhaps they were before. So before, staying in a beautiful upper upscale hotel, that was enough, right? I want to try all the restaurants, I want to go to the spa, I want to go, hang by the pool, that was enough. But today, no. I think we've got to really question what the product is, really, to meet the expectations of people today of far more travel, far more knowledgeable, even if they're not travel. So I think we've got a big task. It's fun.
Okay, your views on this? Yeah, I agree. People are so, travel is so prevalent, and long distance and international travel is so prevalent, and that ratchets up expectations. The ability to research at your fingertips, to have the information at hand, whether through AI or Googling, and understand what you're getting and where to get it. Also, whether you're talking about luxury or the quality of the experience, I think maybe it's a more understated desire. Well, I think there's energy saving. No, I think I don't know. It's a different sense of aesthetics, and it used to be, back in the day, if you had money and you were wealthy and you dressed a certain way and you wanted everybody to know it, and now the person sitting next to you that looks like they're 18 years old in a T-shirt, they could be a billionaire. It's that extends out into the built environment and your expectations when you travel of what you want, and the amenities and all the things that we're talking about. Sustainability.
Experience to adding more activities for their personal activity. Those like they need more big pond, they need water feature, they need place to have a exercise. Those kind of thing is adding more into our design process. So it interestingly it goes to that awareness for that in our part. Maybe Toby also.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, certainly since the pandemic lockdown in many countries, people had that desire to go outside, and I think what came with that was an awareness that spending time in nature actually has positive benefits on health, and so there was sort of an awareness about health because of the pandemic, and aligning that with spending time outdoors. So exactly to echo that. But I think what for us, and certainly the way I approach things in the landscape, is that you want to create outdoor space that people enjoy, and actually now there's more pressure to do that, make it more value add, make it generate enough revenue, and so forth. But I think what we talk about now is sort of more intelligent landscapes, and leveraging sort of digital technology, which has also come on a long way since the pandemic, to design landscapes that are intelligent, functional, highly functional. So, for example, one of the things we do is we use quite sophisticated sort of climate modeling tools when we look at landscape, and we're able to sort of design softscape to actually impact sort of climate, creating microclimates, manage outdoor temperatures, which enables us to then sort of create climately appropriate, climately resilient, sustainable spaces that can be programmed off-season, and so you can generate more revenue because those spaces are actually functional more times of the year. And so, by being smart and intelligent about the landscape and the planting, you can generate more revenue.
Nice. Any questions from anyone for us?
Thank you. Hi, my name is Vinayak. I'm a lighting designer. Just question to the panel, at least, this. We're talking about sustainability a lot today, and Bobby talked about how we are implementing it. So when you're conceptualizing your interior design, is it heading towards more minimal, or is it like an old school, high paneled, heavy, 5-star-ish interior design? How are we guys actually imagining our interior design? Because as a lighting designer, it impacts, and I'm sure when you guys are conceptualizing, lighting is in your background. Yeah, so how are you approaching that thing now?
I can jump in here. I'm not going to talk on behalf of our lovely interior design team. But what I will say is sort of the idea of biophilia is something that sort of is sort of a little bit more prevalent. And that sort of starts to influence a little bit how we think about spaces, not just interior space, but outdoor spaces. And biophilia is really sort of the idea of softening spaces and making us feel a little bit less stressed by space. That comes into lighting as well, the sort of the intensity of lighting. So I think there is maybe a subtle shift towards that. It comes into, Andy mentioned sort of responsible selection materials. That biophilia is sort of those soft, warm textures that start to, make you feel grounded and located and calm. So maybe that starts to influence things as we look at wellness in interiors.
Well, I think it also starts with understanding your client and understanding their tastes, and not coming with a preconception to the table, because there's certainly a number of different ways to approach things aesthetically, and I want to understand. It's different flavors, it's different tastes, and that's the starting point. And lighting is so crucial for interior design, for really fleshing it out and making it shine, regardless the style. But I don't know, it could be very heavy paneled, masculine style. It just depends on our clients to start with. And we like to start with comparables. What do you like? What do you not like? Where have you been? And work from there. It's not predetermined, and I'm not bringing an agenda to the table. Again, I want to do something in good taste and character and proportion and use of materials and detailing, but how that is fleshed out is so dependent on the guy that's paying me, the man or woman or company that's paying me, and what they like, and we can then design something that suits what they like, but looks good, and then with the lighting is such a crucial part of that for interiors.
In fact, I think lighting helps in smart design. I think being responsible, because with the present technology available, you create such fantastic atmospheres and ambiances where it sort of can balance that excessive expenditure on paneling and doing the heavy stuff, and you still create a beautiful environment that you feel really good about entering. We're talking about sometimes we are unable to explain why a guest feels so nice entering a certain space. It's not just about those richness of materials. I think lighting goes a long way in doing that, and that's where I think technology does come in.
I think sometimes as well, simplicity is luxury.
Yeah.
I'd ask everybody a question: when did you last use the TV in a guest room? And there's lots of things like that. How often when you go into a new hotel do you faff around trying to find the light switch and get the lighting and the way you want to use your room? I think we've changed. Technology, people's habits, everything has changed slightly, and I think we're trying to play catch up in a way to try and make sure that we can be on trend and aligned with those expectations. And lighting's a huge one. It's always one of the biggest subjects when we're doing mock-up rooms or we're doing spaces. It plays a huge part, as Gary said. It's enormous, but I think people with technology and the knowledge that the patterns have changed. Simple is luxury, I think.
Good things. I think we should connect further after this, because I have a current experience also. We always trying to fight, please put lighting designer also at the first place, because
not as an afterthought. It should come. It should be part of the.
This should be part of the initial design, itself. Right? Because smart system has cost to it, right? For sure, and as a designer, we also need to make the design to be a good ambience, and we need to also help from the lighting design to make it happen. And those kind of sensor, those kind of LED, all those technical things is better to at the first place instead of afterthought. Because once the project decide to be used the smart system and it costs certain amount of money, and then it doesn't work in terms of the feasibility, then client decide to go to the back traditional, and then again it does it goes out to the vision of the sustainability that they are trying to approach. That's why we always speaking of all the consultant, all the designer, whether it's a structural, it's a landscape, it's an interior, need to be at the first place gathering together on where we going on to this project. So it's much better to apply those smart and sustainability approach.
This word, smart technology, it's often a common buzzword nowadays. Do you see it influencing hotel design in your?
I mean, I'd question what smart is.
Yeah.
It's
a buzzword that
as you
everyone's
said,
talking about.
It's a buzzword, but what do we really mean? We're really looking to simplify, make seamless, utilize the technology that people carry around in their pockets to make the process more a nicer experience and less complicated, more time consuming. So that's sort of one area of smart, I think. But it's aligning with people and the trends.
I think the ideal technology should be transparent, should be invisible, is enhancing, is facilitating, but the technology itself is not the point. The technology is underlying. Ideally, you're not thinking about it. And the crude example, or not crude, but the common example is the switches in the room. You just shouldn't have to think about it. The technology is supporting what you're trying to achieve in design and in operations and not be the point in and of itself. It's a supporting role.
Perhaps there's a danger as well that the smart side of things can take away from the experience. Everybody has their own views as well, but service and personal attention in a hotel is one of the most memorable things you'll have. And I think there's a danger of sort of sidestepping that for efficiency purposes.
I see sometimes in the bathrooms, the new showering systems, and there are all sorts of levers and buttons and stuff, and it, as a designer, we are familiar with some of the hardware, but I've been in certain places where being an interior designer, an architect, and I've struggled with it,
I had a time a number of years ago traveling and arriving somewhere, I think in the Middle East, in the middle of the night, exhausted, after spending 10 minutes trying to figure out how to shut off the lights, literally, and make the room dark. I put my goggles on, and I just left the lights on and just slept. But it shouldn't be that hard. It shouldn't be that complicated.
I went through that very recently in some hotel too.
Yeah,
one light I could not switch off.
I tend to agree with Andy about the idea of what is smart.
You know what I did? Ultimately, I unscrewed the bulb, got out. Okay, I think that we had a good discussion, and we call it a day on this one. Okay, thanks for attending, and
thank you, gentlemen, for that very insightful discussion.
Thank
I
you.
now request you to please take a group picture as well, a photograph. And for the audience, we will now welcome you to the Grand Showroom for lunch. Thank you so much for attending. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.